Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club for a unexpected part four, which I thought would be finishing the rocket, but it occurs to me that while I was doing this, there are a few things that we should probably do before we actually get to the finishing step. One is, so I finished gluing on the fins. One thing that's important to do when you're building one like this is to check the alignment before you actually let the glue completely dry. For some instructions, unfortunately, not this one, there is a page that has like a silhouette. Oops, that's upside down. That has a silhouette of what the fins ought to look like properly attached. The best this one has is this little thing here showing you, hey, they ought to be at 90-degree angles. Well, that's not super useful. We know they ought to be at 90-degree angles, but what's a 90-degree angle look like? Well, there are a variety of ways you could do this. Part of the important thing is to make sure that the fins themselves are 180 degrees across from each other. And you can do that by grabbing your rocket and using a ruler like this. A ruler is a straight line, right? It's 180 degrees. So if the fins just lay flat against the ruler like so, now the launch lug is going to get in the way for this one, they should be at 180 degrees. Another thing you can do is say the corner of this paper. Well, that's a 90-degree angle. So we could move down the corner and we could kind of line the fins one at a time up and check to see that the corner actually makes a 90-degree angle. I have a mat at home, a cutting mat, that has angles drawn on it, which personally I like. But in this case, what I did was I essentially did the corner thing. I did it on the corner of a desk, which I'd love to show you, but I can't actually film the corner. And I basically just laid the rocket on the corner of the desk and rotated it through the four different angles to make sure that the fins were essentially at 90-degree angles for each. So they're in good shape. Other things I need to do. So I mentioned the launch lug. Well, we might as well put that on. There's the launch lug line. The launch lugs, I generally don't put a whole lot of, you don't need to worry about them as much because there's not anywhere near as much force on them. So a bit of glue. That's not very straight. I generally don't bother doing the two layers, but I am going to spread this out because I did make a bit of a mess there where I kind of forgot what I was doing and it globbed on a little bit. So that's good. Then make sure that you're lining it up with the mark that you've made. So that goes right here. You want it lined up with the end, and then you want to make sure that the line is going through the middle, both at the bottom of the launch lug and the top, so that it is straight. You can also do this, and again, can't show you because it's off camera. You can eyeball, you can look like down the business end of the rocket, and you should see that the launch lug is presenting a circle to you. If you can see straight through it, it's probably on straight. If you're looking at it and you see part of the edge, then you've got a problem and it's not on straight. Essentially, think of it like this. If it's on straight, you should be able to see the whole way through, right, like that. But if it's crooked, you'll be occluded. This, by the way, is one of the whistle fins, dried and ready to attach. This is another thing we need to do. We'll get to that in a minute because I'll let the glue set for this for the time being. Another thing we need to do according to the instructions are these are the whistles. And the whistles themselves they don't really fit in here quite right. They're way too sloppy, right? They're not, it's not the same diameter. So what we need to do is we need to take one of these yellow rings and put it over the fin. And when that's done, they will fit because the yellow tube fits perfectly flush in there. These actually fit quite nicely. They're pretty snug, but we actually want to glue them in place. The instructions say what we want to do is we want to put them 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the whistle. Well, I can measure that once and then just kind of eyeball it from there. So 1/4 of an inch, and I'm not going to be able to draw the line because it's red plastic, is about that far. So it's about here to my thumb. I'm going to put this on and just see what that looks like. And I can check against this as well. So yeah, it actually, the fin is tapered a little bit, and any farther than this makes it hard to push on. So I'm just going to leave this assembled. It's not glued. I'm going to use that as a reference when I build the other ones. Now, the instructions call for this stuff. Um, yeah, I'm not in love with plastic cement, and if I can avoid using it, I do. If you are building it and you are not 18, this is what you're going to use, at least with me. Yeah, probably helps to have it this way. I, on the other hand, being an adult, am going to use, there we go, some super glue. This is easier for me to work with, but you can glue your fingers together in a fairly permanent fashion, and you only get one crack at this. So, uh, yeah, probably not for general audiences, but I'm going to use it because it sticks better. The plastic cement doesn't really, it's okay for gluing plastic to plastic, but not for other, this is paper to plastic. So, in any event, I'm going to put a little bit of it. You can see I've got a lot of growth here. A thin little layer around the tube. Get this and push it on. That's about as far as that's going to go, and that is starting to get super sticky already. I'm going to try to mop up as much as I can here. I am not going to push it any farther because I don't think it's going to go any farther. I just want to see how close it is, and it's not quite level either, but that'll do. Let's see if I can push it down a little more. That's fine. They don't need to be perfect because all this is going to do is just go in here and give it the glue some purchase. We don't need plastic cement for this, just to give it something to grab onto. So I'll do the rest of those off camera. You certainly don't need to watch. That is tricky work with crazy glue, so this might actually be a better tool. It just won't hold as well. Last but not least, actually there are two other things. One is, so this is basically, the lower fins for this are essentially done, but we do want to put fillets on them. And I'm not sure that's something we've actually done before. Basically, I like to have, first of all, a small nozzle rather than the wood glue nozzle that usually comes with one of these things. This is like a school glue nozzle that I've harvested from elsewhere. This works pretty well. Get yourself ready to go with the glue and just squeeze it in. That's fantastic. I generally put it on half the rocket, so like 1, 2, 3, 4 sides at a time, and that way I can have it upright. You don't want to do this vertically because the glue's wet and it will run as it dries, so I like to have it horizontally. Once it's on, you need a finger, and you just wipe like so. It didn't look super great at the top, so I'm going to run past it a second time. If you could look at this up close magnified, we've created kind of a nice pocket, which is smooth and aerodynamic. And it's also made the fin stronger. So something to want to do. I will apply the other 7 fillets at some point. Also, when you do the launch lug, you want fillets on that. There are 2 reasons. One is to strengthen the tube, but it also makes it more aerodynamic. So it's something to look forward to. Last but not least, whistle fins. I didn't actually attach them, so let's actually do that. The whistle fin is going to be oriented like this, so it's going to be pointing kind of upwards, which is an interesting look for a rocket. Usually don't see that. And remember, they are going to be at 1.5 inches past the end of the tube, which I've already measured. So, same usual business, put some glue on the fin. Here's my stick. Again, spreading the glue out. That was actually a little thin, but it'll be all right. That first layer doesn't need to be super thick. Really, neither of the layers need to be very thick. There's no benefit to having too much glue versus the right amount. So that's good. Remember, we're going to let that dry a little bit, get a little tacky before we put a second layer on. This is basically the same process as the lower fins. This might actually be easier, though, because I'm going to be applying it up from the edge. So with the edge, it was kind of hard to see where the tail end of my fin was relative to the front end to see if it was in alignment or not. When they're up elevated from the end of the tube, you can see it a whole lot better. That's probably enough time. Let's put on the second layer of glue. I'm actually going to roll this over one so I don't potentially mess with my launch lug. I don't think that's terribly likely, but we wouldn't want that since that's still wet. My glue is pretty thin. pretty uniform, but I'm going to spread it out again just for good measure. Okay. And attach. Flip this. Here's my line. And remember, I want it pointing forwards rather than backwards. Adjust this again. I'm going to get the edge of my fin right down on that line and then kind of roll it forward as best as I can so that it's right in the middle of the line. Now the tube makes this awfully hard for you to see, so I'll try to roll it like this. At least this end you can see, yep, the fin is squarely right in the middle. This end, yeah, it's also kind of hard to see, but I can adjust it. It looks pretty good. Maybe a little tiny bit off the middle, but that's not bad, just a little bit of a tap. And then I'm going to clean up my glue. This is kind of like a proto fillet when you smooth this out, but obviously the glue isn't uniform. Like in here, there's not any, so it'll require an actual fillet in a bit. So that's attached, just looking down the business end of it. See, like this, we want it kind of dead in the middle, so we're going to have to align these as well. These should actually be easier to align. Looks like it's a little bit off kilter. And you can use the spacing of the two existing fins. Let's try it. Yeah, that's kind of hard to do. Anyway, you can use the existing fins to tell you how accurate you are. It should be right in the middle. You shouldn't have a whole lot of trouble because, like I said, these are stubby fins, so they're not going to be leaning too far, one would think. But you do want to make sure that it's pretty accurate. And again, we're going to check the alignment of all four of the whistle fins once they're all on. All right, so that takes care of at least showing the fillets, showing the launch lug. The whistle fins are in process, and the whistles are at least somewhat assembled at this point, ready to go. Remember, I got to do the rest of these. That takes care of the pre-painting assembly. There are a few things to do afterwards. After painting, I'm going to put the whistles in. Remember, they go inside the tube like this. So that'll be good, kind of like that, the whole way, of course. I'm not going to put it the whole way. And the shock cord needs to be done, but I only do that after painting it because I don't like to have it wobbling around inside the body tube while I'm painting. So that's pretty much it. Off to the paint shop, I guess, for me after the glue dries. I will see you for the finishing step, which should be the last one. See you then.